Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. Electrifying.
Hello and welcome back to this week's version of the Roundup show on the Cannon podcast with myself as host, AFC James, or James as people know me as. This has been an absolutely hectic day and week. The first few times I did the show, I had a very nice, relaxed. There were a few rumours here, a few rumours there. And then for some reason, the last 2 Wednesdays that I've done the show, absolute hell has broken loose. And this week has been like no other. So as always, thank you for joining me. And I have a special guest today that I am honoured to have on. A long-term friend of mine, I hope I can say, but someone that I've never spoken to on a podcast in person. So thank you, Max. Big up, James. So yeah, we're going to dissect this week's transfer news from Madueke, Rodrigo, who's quietened down a bit actually, to who else? Gyökeres and Eze. There seems to be so much going on at Arsenal at the moment, but no new links, which is a strange one. So we've got a lot to talk about and mixed emotions, I think, with I'm so angry at the club for pursuing this player. Without further ado, I don't want to let him miss all this talk. I will bring in today's special guest, who is Alexander Barker. First of all, thank you for coming on, Alex. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Well, I'm good to be on here. I am currently sweating. It's very hot in London, and as a ginger person, I don't cope well in it. I don't think my internet is coping well either. So I'm going to speak slowly today, and hopefully it all goes well. But yeah, very happy to be here.
Good. And we are happy to have you on, as I say. So Alex is actually the first person on this show who is not an Arsenal fan. Alex is. Do you have a specific team that you support? I really should know this, but I've.
No, you're good for not knowing. I don't have a team. I'm a neutral fan.
That's crazy. What did you like? Who got you into football in the first place? Because typically, obviously, if your dad gets you into football, you support your dad's team. So yeah, where did your love for football start? Just quickly before we jump into Arsenal.
Yeah, I'll give you the quick version. My dad is a Bolton fan. He took me to Bolton games. I saw them in the table, saw them not doing well, saw many scary men in the stands. I thought, no. My favourite colour was blue. So when I was like 5, I started supporting Chelsea. And when I grew up and realised my mistake, I moved away from that and, just kind of didn't care about Chelsea anymore and eventually embraced neutrality. And now most Chelsea fans think I hate them. So I think it's worked out quite well.
I was going to say, if you still supported Chelsea, it was not too late to kick you off the show. But yeah, if you're a neutral, we'll have you on. And for once, it's a refreshing perspective because we either speak to Arsenal fans or non-Arsenal fans, and any non-Arsenal fan typically nowadays hates Arsenal for whatever reason. Maybe you know better than I, but everyone hates Arsenal. It's a very easy club to hate, and our fans are very passionate about like defending the badge. So we've got a lot to get into, but first of all, as always, let me know in the comments how you are, how your day's been, and less of this, please. The Thierry Henry. We'll get into it. So as I said, we will start today with the most breaking news, which, to my understanding, is, if I can get it up, Fabrizio Romano exclusive today. Arsenal have submitted an initial bid for Noni Madueke, around 50 million package add-ons included. Chelsea want more than 50 million fixed, as Alanga/similar deals remain their reference. What do you think? First of all, what was your gut instinct when you saw the Madueke links to Arsenal? Because this did come out of nowhere from an Arsenal perspective.
Yeah, it came out of nowhere for me as well when I saw it. Like you say, I've been paying close attention to Arsenal this summer, and I had similar expectations to, I think, yourself. Going to target a left winger, going to target a striker. Okay, a backup for Saka makes sense, but quite a lot of money for Noni Madueke. It did catch you by surprise. What I will say, and I'll try not to analyse any players in detail on this because I can drone on and on and on in that regard, but I know a lot of Arsenal fans are very angry at this move. And I think from a strategic point of view, there are questions, like I said. I will say my reaction wasn't negative because I think Madueke is incredibly underrated. I think he.
All right. I don't want to put reins on you, Alex. Tell us why you think he's underrated.
I just think so. I've did a video on him earlier this year, and like to put it simply, I think aesthetically he's often like doesn't look good. His dribbling can sometimes look a bit clunky. His shooting, can be a bit erratic. But fundamentally, he's someone who takes a lot of shots and is an effective dribbler. And the one thing I'll say analytically is that I've been following him for quite a while, and the thing I've been most impressed by over the last year or so is he. I can remember like in 2024, he wasn't a particularly good crosser, certainly on his weaker right foot. And if you go, as I did, I went through all of his crosses over the last year and a half, and you can see a really gradual improvement in that. And now he's someone who can go down the right and cross in on his right. So I just think he's underrated in that regard. He's improved quite a bit. And I'm still kind of surprised by how negative mainly Chelsea fans are towards him, and to an extent how Arsenal fans have reacted to it.
Yeah, if you want any evidence of how Arsenal fans are towards against him, we have Madueke underrated. He's worse than Garnacho, Lamau. I disagree. His end product is garbage. Yeah, I can get behind that. He's not someone who I would feel confident if he's staring down the white of the eyes of a defender that he'd burst the back of the net. But and also the concern is he has been earmarked potentially, from what I understand reading, as maybe the solution to our left wing problems. Have you considered him as a left winger before? Did you see this as an option before Maresca did it in the last few weeks?
I don't see that one as an option per se. I think he's done surprisingly well on the left when I've seen him. I remember watching back his first game where he did it. I think it was a few months ago, playing off the left, and I was like, oh wow, he's doing quite well here. I think that's mainly down to his dribbling, but I think the charm of Madueke on the right is, like I said, he's someone who's comfortable going on the right and crossing, and he's someone comfortable cutting in on his left and shooting. Whether he hits the target all the time, like we said, is a bit up in the air, but I don't think he's as good on the left at cutting in on his right. So I think he's done well there, like as filling in, let's say. But if you were to play him there regularly, I think defenders would quite quickly find out, okay, he's going to be predictable here. He's probably not want to go cut inside on his right and shoot often, so we could probably handle him.
And it just feels, from my perspective, as there are a lot. I really do think there are a lot of left wingers out there on the market. There is Leao potentially. There's Rodrigo potentially. There's Eze even. If we're signing Madueke to play on the left, it just doesn't make sense to me, especially for this fee. And I don't know. We took a huge risk with Havertz as a left centre mid, as the tip of a box midfield, and I understood that risk if we had a Xhaka already in left centre mid, but we don't. So we're making this huge gamble, and if it doesn't pay off, then we're stuck with Madueke at left wing and no one else. So a difficulty with this deal for me is it depends what else happens in the market. If we then sign Rodrigo and sign Gyökeres, then we're looking at this deal thinking, actually, kind of makes sense because we need Saka backup. We need potentially another left winger. A big problem as well is the fee. How much do you think Arsenal should pay for a player of Madueke's quality?
That's a good question. I think, Chelsea brought him in for around 40 million, if I remember correctly, right? Around that price. So I think that's kind of setting the price that Chelsea will want to profit. But it's difficult to say always in the transfer market. But I think for 50 million, like Tottenham, for example, they look like they're about to sign Mohamed Kudus for around about that fee. And, Kudus is going to start for Tottenham. And there's an argument he's probably more ready than Madueke. So signing Madueke when he's going to be your backup to Saka, it is a bit like you probably want that more in the 30s, I think, for Arsenal at least.
Yeah. Now, an upside I do see in the deal, not to go all accountant on everyone, but he is allegedly on 50,000 a week wages, and apparently he would be on the same wages at Arsenal, which to me makes a significant difference, because if you've got a guy like him on 50,000 a week over a season, that's 3 million. Over 5 seasons, that's 13 million, compared to if he was on 100k a week. And through that, you're then paying a lot less in the total transfer fee. But again, the fundamental problem for me is we've gone into this transfer window needing a left winger. This is not the solution. And just to read the report from Times Sport, posted by Eduardo Hagen, Arsenal have been searching for a left winger, also considered Real Madrid's Rodrigo, Aston Villa's Morgan Rogers, Newcastle's Anthony Gordon, Nico Williams. And Madueke is the answer? I don't know. I'd love to hear people's thoughts in the chat, because as I say, I don't mind him as a player. I see why people like him, but he's an add-on. He's most certainly not the solution to Arsenal's left wing. I don't know what you think of that.
I was just going to say, another thing to clear up. I'm not 100% certain here, but a colleague of mine, Kaya Kanak, I think he works at Football London as an Arsenal reporter, now sits opposite me at work. He and I've just double checked it now. I don't think Madueke qualifies as homegrown, right? Because
I was going to bring this up earlier. That is I don't think it's so much a concern for Arsenal right now, because we do have, this Abud has put this quite nicely. We do have a lot of homegrown players. We have Dauman in the squad now, Nwaneri, Lewis Kelly, Rice, White, David Raya is homegrown, Saka, I could go on. But it's just another little thing that kind of adds to the pot of this deal not making so much sense. This is important to me, really important. Madueke not expected to end Arsenal's interest in Eze. We really need an Eze type player in central spaces, I think. Someone who can grab the game by the scruff of the neck and change it. And I've been speaking to people, and he is the type of player who, against the mid blocks, that will change the game. Last season, we drew so many games against Fulham, West Ham, stupid games to draw. We even lost some of them. I feel like Eze is a type of player to turn those draws into victories. And if we can get Eze and Madueke, then that certainly helps. But my fear, I don't know what we think of this report from Jacob Steinberg, but my fear is it would be either or, because otherwise we're stockpiling, and it's very un-Arsenal to stockpile. So we'll move on to Eze. I'll bring him up on the screen as well. But how do you feel about the potential of Madueke and Eze? And do you think there's room for both at Arsenal?
So I think this actually comes back to the point you just said about stockpiling, which isn't very Arsenal. Now, I've got a theory here. This has no backing. I've got no industry secret. This is just sort of my guess. And it's a little bit based off what Chelsea have been doing, right? So I think as football has been the last 10, 15 years, there's been a consensus that there's a nice squad size, and Guardiola's promoted this a lot. He's gone on the record numerous times to say he doesn't want 2 players per position. He wants 11 starters and then 7 or 8 players who can cover across the pitch. And that makes sense because you want to keep everyone fit, rotating in, and there's no one left out in the cold. I wonder if clubs are changing their attitude towards that, and because of the thing Arsenal experienced last year, injuries. That we keep saying there are more games than ever, and the response to that is we need to protest. We need to reduce the number of games in the calendar. This is not fair on the players. Realistically, that's probably not going to happen. So what's the next thing you do as a club? Well, you go, okay, if we can anticipate we're going to lose players, let's just build a bigger squad. And Chelsea, for example, last summer, there was so much talk against them of what are they doing with football? This is crazy. Why are they signing so many players? And come on, a lot of players they signed didn't work out, Joao Felix being one, right? But at the end of the day, they signed a ton of players. They got top 4 and they won the Conference League. So it's not like signing too many players is necessarily the big evil thing that we think of. So to bring it back to Arsenal with Eze, I think, okay, if you sign Eze and let's say a left winger, I'm not sure both of those players can play every game unless you move Declan Rice back into a 6, which doesn't seem to be an.
And we've just signed Zubimendi, so
yeah, exactly right. This is a very interesting thing, which I'm excited to talk about, I'm sure, later on. So I think Arsenal's approach might be okay, let's just stockpile some talented players and just make sure we're covering all bases, especially since you want to win now.
Yeah. And I also think another aspect of this is not just, as you kind of alluded to, the reaction to the injuries, but being proactive. Because a big difficulty Arteta has had throughout his whole time managing Arsenal is not trusting backups. The reason why Saka plays so many games is because our backup right winger has been, to date, Nwaneri, who was 17 going into the season. That's not his strongest position. Martinelli, Sterling, none of these he could trust in any significant game. So we've got him. We've got Saliba at the moment. We don't have a backup right centre back who can cover with enough certainty. We've got Ødegaard, who again we've had real difficulties knowing when to rotate. So we complain if these three players we're looking at right now, Madueke, Eze, Rodrigo, are able to be signed, all of them, as well as a striker, it's absolute dreamland as an Arsenal fan. We've never heard of it before. But this is kind of the ramifications of modern football where you have to be able to cope with the amount of games. The big difficulty is for Arsenal fans is the idea of where does Nwaneri live in all of this? Because if we sign Eze, you'd imagine he would be Ødegaard's backup and left wing backup. And he could even play on the right wing even. Probably not. But Madueke, you've got right wing and left wing. Where does Nwaneri live amongst all this chaos? Do you think that is a problem, or do you think young players are able to find their place in the squad if they're good enough?
Again, I think this comes down to what Arsenal want in the immediate future. And what we keep hearing, I'm not sure if it's like reported officially by the club, but it seems like this transfer strategy suggests they want to win now. And let's put yourself in that bubble, right? If you're Mikel Arteta and you think my best chance to win a Premier League title is next season or the season after, in that bubble, then selling Nwaneri, bringing money for him, makes sense. Now, if you're thinking more long term, you think, okay, we want to protect our future, and we've got a very talented young player here, and we want to bring him in, and we want to give him minutes, and maybe he doesn't win us a title next season, right? Then, or like, you know what I mean, he's not a Rodrigo, let's say, you'll probably want to keep him. But if Arsenal want to win now, then selling him, I guess it makes sense in that bubble. I mean, I should say right now, I don't know how you feel, James. I don't know how Arsenal fans feel, but I do find this win now mentality kind of interesting because Manchester City are looking very strong and they're investing heavily. Liverpool have just won the Premier League. I'm not saying Arsenal can't win the Premier League next season. Like, they've come very close the last 3 years, but I think it's interesting that they think this is our time now. Let's invest. This is our time to win it. When if anything, it seems harder than maybe last season looked.
I hear what you're saying, but also you can't now turn around and say, I wish we invested more last season, because it's been and gone. And also the way I would look at it is a lot of our key players are entering their prime now. Saliba is getting a year older, Saka, Gabriel, Rice. We have a lot of players that I would like to say are world class. And I think if you stack them up against the other teams in the Premier League, at our best, we have shown that we can go through 6 months periods getting 50 points, going 90 plus points over the season. Now, the problem is every season we've capitulated for one reason or another. So the ultimate aim is, how can we stop that from happening? And you're absolutely right. Probably the win now option, the easiest solution, is to say the best way to stop that from happening is sign players. So when the guys go down, which they inevitably will, guys can step in. And we're not even putting square pegs in round holes. We're putting diamond pegs in round holes. We're putting Mourinho up front in the semi-final of the Champions League. This is insane. And we still, and I don't care, people will gaslight me, we still gave PSG a good game. And I watched that in Paris and I was miserable and I was so sad. But we gave PSG a much better game. And if we beat them, Inter Milan were terrible. I don't care what the hipsters think. They were terrible in the final. And I think we would have beaten them. But so, yes, we regressed in the league last season. But I think as a squad and as a mentality, we are getting closer and closer every season. As this is the transfer roundup show, we will be rating Madueke's... the Madueke links. So I'm sure this is the first time you've seen this, Alex, but this is the five cannon rating scale of how legit you think the links are. So rather than rating the transfer itself, it's how likely do you think this is to happen. So with Madueke, Where would you rank him on the 5-point rating scale? And anyone in the comments, please offer your opinion.
Well, I think considering David Alton is technically a colleague of mine, I don't think I can give it anything below it. It's got legs. So I'll work within these boundaries. I mean, they done the classic thing, which I know, as someone really famous on Twitter pointed out, that Arsenal really good at agreeing personal terms before making an official bid, which suggests that they've got this on lock. And it's just hit him there. See, I think, I mean, I definitely would have got this far if it wasn't going to happen. And Chelsea, like, they very clearly like trading players. I think they're a team now that I don't think they see players in the same way other clubs do, where it's like, this is Madueke, we're going to grow him into this superstar. I do kind of feel like Chelsea are like, well, if we're going to get 50, 60 million for him, then let's take it. Why not? So yeah, I'll give it the 5. I forgot what it was called. Take your house on it.
I'll bring, yeah, you're absolutely right. I'll bring it back up. I was looking for a report that I saw earlier, which said Chelsea were interested in selling Madueke last season, and then he scored a hat-trick against Wolves, and they changed their mind and did a U-turn, which just feels awfully Chelsea mentality, where they're like, oh yeah, we're going to sell this guy. Oh, shiny new toy. He's got a hat-trick. Maybe he's good. And then they realize, actually, we can always sell to Arsenal because Arsenal always bail Chelsea out in the window. And that is my biggest problem with this transfer. Aside from everything else, and I know it's so reductive, but we are giving one of our direct rivals 40, 50 million. If we were pulling their pants down and signing him for 35 million, then I'd agree with the transfer. But for 50 million, he's not worth that. And we just keep giving Chelsea money. So 5, sadly, it says Da 11 eat. 1 says John Chandler. I'm not going to say I wish it was, because I really don't hate the player as much as a lot of people do. It depends on what else happens in this window. So I would say probably 4. It's got legs, and I think the most important aspect of this to happen is obviously both teams agreeing the fee. Because yes, we've done personal terms, as a wise man once said, but Arsenal should not be going anywhere near 50 million. And as I see it, all the eggs are in our basket that we can say 40 million. He doesn't want to play for Chelsea. Chelsea fans are going to hate him, so give him us. And I don't think there's any rush to sign him either. He's not going to come back to pre-season straight away because he's been at the Club World Cup. So yeah, absolutely. And so I've got a very interesting name, Spit Roast Entertainment. That's the first and last time I will be reading out your comment. Strengthening your rival finances is crazy work. It is, and it's becoming a trend of Arsenal. And again, this kind of shows the general sentiment towards Madueke. Madueke announced, I might delete all apps. What I hope from Arsenal fans in general is that if he does come through the door, to support the guy, because I understand the frustration, but it's not his choice. He doesn't want to cause all this trouble. He just wants to play football, and he strikes me as a sort of player that probably would rely on confidence. So if he's getting battered by Arsenal fans, that's going to do him no favors. So yeah, if he comes through the door, support the guy. But yeah, we'll put a password on the door so he potentially doesn't come through. Joking. The next player we will discuss is a striker, of course, which Arsenal have needed for years now. We signed Havertz as a midfielder who accidentally became a striker, and to me is actually better than people think, but that's a story for another day. Fabrizio Romano, Victor Gyökeres, I'm not sure how you say his name, Victor Gyökeres, I think it's Gyökeres actually. Victor Gyökeres in Arsenal. He
I don't know if that's me.
Am I okay? Can you hear me?
I don't know if that was me or you, but we are good now.
It was me.
Yay, we're good now. We're good.
Okay. Basically, where I got to was, what do you think of the whole Gyökeres Sesko debacle?
Okay. Yeah, this I'd forgotten Gyökeres existed until about 30 seconds before you brought him up, and then it all of a sudden hit me. It's like, oh yeah, I don't actually know what Arsenal are doing in this move. Personally, I think Sesko makes a lot more sense for Arsenal, just having watched both players. I really did not expect him to go for Victor Gyökeres. And like I said, I don't have any internal knowledge here, but part of my brain is still like, is this a smokescreen? Are they just trying to get Sesko's value down? And I'm not in the camp at all where I think Gyökeres is rubbish. He clearly has value, but I just feel like Sesko makes a lot more sense for Arsenal. And I think of all the win now signings, this is the one I feel the most queasy about, because it's not just if Gyökeres doesn't work out, like that harms your title hopes. If Gyökeres doesn't work out, then you lose so much resale value, right? And in a PSR world, that does matter. Whereas if Sesko doesn't work out, I back Arsenal to still get 30, 40 million for him or whatever.
Yeah, he's definitely not the Cannon podcast members' favorite choice. They were going heavy on Sesko. I know Alex, George, and Rohan were. What I will say is Mikel Merino was scoring goals in this Arsenal system. So you'd like to think that a guy who scored, I can't remember, I think it's like 103 goals in 96 games. And people keep bringing up Bastos this, Bastos that. He scores goals. And it's such a reductive argument. And I'm standing in front of an analyst and saying, but he scores goals, mate. Why don't you like him? But ultimately, we have been missing that. We don't have a guy who, as I said earlier, looks into the whites of defenders' eyes and goes, I want this more than you. And by all accounts, it seems like Sesko is desperate to join Gyökeres is desperate to join Arsenal. He broke up with his girlfriend. He's refused to go to training. And he's apparently taken a €2 million wage cut. So that is something. Again, the passion fan in me thinks, bring him. What's the worst that can happen? But yeah, it does seem like Sesko was our main target. So dropping down to Gyökeres, if you want to say that, is a risk. But this on the screen right now is the biggest issue with the deal, it seems. Reported by my good friend Hand of Arsenal, Leipzig refused to negotiate a fee lower than €90 million for Sesko in recent weeks. What is the highest that you'd go for Sesko, in your opinion?
The short answer is, having to think about it now, I think it's always hard because it's in euros, but I feel like 80, 90 million isn't. I don't look at that and think that's insane. It might be for Arsenal because you clearly want to do a ton of business, but I think in isolation, that's not a terrible valuation for Sesko.
And yeah, I guess the question is going for Gyökeres instead of Sesko, is that enabling you to get Madueke? Is that worth it? And with this also, apparently, it seems like from the deal, the payment terms that Leipzig wanted were absolutely nightmarish. So from what I heard, they wanted a significant amount of money up front. And as many people know, that sort of thing for clubs nowadays who are looking to spread the cost over 5-10 years is terrible. And the same way we spent Nicolas Pepe's fee over about 5-year period, if a club is asking for 40-50 million in a single season, that just isn't going to happen. So it's a shame. It really is a shame because he made sense to me. But it's also been frustrating because he doesn't seem to have done anything to try and push the deal. And you'd like to think that if Arsenal come knocking, and I say this as an Arsenal fan, but as a Leipzig player, if Arsenal come knocking, most players will turn their head and go, I want you. So in the most respectful way possible, I will say, Leipzig, where's this gentleman's agreement? Because apparently last season they had one and it's gone. So yeah, weird situation, but we can all get behind this celebration. I don't want to cover my mouth for the microphone, but it's cold, as the kids would say. So yeah, I can get behind a little bit of this. Leave some thoughts in the comments for Alex and I, and if you have any suggestions of other players instead of Madueke or Eze that you'd be consideration of? Please let me know. Yes, as Lewis Hogan says, 90 million euros is 78 million pounds. That's a lot of money. That is a lot of money, and I know Sesko has such a high ceiling, but right now, I don't think he's anywhere near that. And agree with Paul James also. 90 million euros for Sesko is insane when you can get Rodrigo for the same money. And that is my biggest priority this window, Rodrigo, because I walked into this transfer window hoping for a world-class attacker, because that's what we need. I think you can survive with Havertz if you have Rodrigo and Saka on either side. You can survive with Martinelli if you've got Isak and Saka. But if you're going Madueke, Gyökeres, Saka, that doesn't feel enough to me. So we'll go back to the image we used before. And in terms of priorities, including Gyökeres, Madueke, Eze and Rodrigo, where would you rank those four in terms of the order of importance? And in the comments, please leave your response too.
I would say these three plus Gyökeres. Rodrigo is first by a very, very long way. After that, I think it's honestly after that it's Eze and Gyökeres kind of together, and then Madueke like a little bit further behind them. My answer really is just Rodrigo is the priority, and the rest should be like they should be put to the side until that deal is done. That is my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's hard, obviously, because the Rodrigo deal is something that's going to drag on. I think just the nature of the transfer. Apparently, he's going through some personal troubles as well. So whatever that is, we're going to have to give him time to work through it. But the concern is if we sign Madueke first and then sign Gyökeres and Eze, I don't think we're going to have enough money for Rodrigo. And I would rather... I don't know. That's a very difficult question. Would you rather Rodrigo or Eze and Madueke? Abai Warrior says Rodrigo, Eze, Madueke, Gyökeres. That's a crazy opinion because we absolutely need a striker. I maybe if you add Sesko to the mix, Abe, you'd put someone else before. But yeah, there's no chance I'd have him that far back. And Rodrigo is no better than Martinelli. Yeah, I'm not sure. What do you think of that, Alex?
Someone said this to me the other day. It was Kaya again. He said, "Is Rodrigo that much better than Martinelli?" And I was kind of surprised by that because I guess when you live in an office of people talking football, you get used to very, very nerdy opinions. But like my take Rodrigo is he has played out of position his entire career at Real Madrid. He is best on the left and he's played on the right and still consistently put up goal scoring numbers. And I get like. I think something that's been apparent talking to you actually is the differing opinions from like a fan and a neutral. Like when you're saying stuff like, "I don't want us to sell to Chelsea," like Gyökeres, like his celebration. It sounds gimmicky, but like that is something I wouldn't consider, and I do think it matters. Something that I think that matters with Rodrigo is he's consistently scored in the Champions League, crucial goals at crucial times. Like this is a world-class player. And going back to what I was going to say about out of position. If you look at his numbers on the left, he's always put up his best numbers there. They tend to be like 0.4 goals and assists per 90. So I just think he's way ahead.
0.4? I not higher.
It was like I'm in my head. I've got that number. It might have been from one of the sides, but the point is, like, he's very good up there. I might need to look at that. But I want to quickly throw something back to you actually, because there seems to be like your thing you mentioned about a tough question, Rodrigo or Eze plus Madueke. I like Eze. I'm kind of surprised how in Arsenal are in for him because, well, for a simple question, assuming Declan Rice is going to play left 8, assuming Eze, I think we can all agree Eze's best position is probably left wing. He's a bit more inside than that. Where does Eze play on a consistent basis?
The crazy thing is I don't think, unless if we signed Madueke and Eze, then I think Eze would start left wing, which is weird. But again, then you've got no width on the left-hand side because Rice, Lewis Skelly and Eze all want to play in the inside channel. I think the truth is he would just be excellent in a lot of positions. I think he can play left wing and play either side 8 very, very well. But yeah, it's interesting because does he want to? He's too good to not start. That's what it feels like. So maybe we are trying to get to that Man City where he would be almost the best 12th man you could have. He is of that quality that you could bring him on as a sub, you could start him, and the level would absolutely not drop. Whereas at the moment, Marino, yeah, if you bring in Marino for Rice, the level clearly drops. So, and also importantly, in certain game states, as I kind of alluded to earlier with the mid blocks, he'd be really, really valuable in certain game states where potentially we're playing a weaker team. Then you play Rice at the 6, play Eze left centre mid, or you even play Zubimendi and Eze left centre mid to be able to drive through them in the central spaces. But I just think, rather than talking about the position that we're lacking, if we're talking about the profile that we're lacking, I think it's a lot more clear when you see it that way. Does that answer your question?
That is a good answer. I think that's a good way of looking at it. I think my counter to that would be, first of all, I would say I agree, but as that left-sided sort of creative presence, someone who can, it's not just scoring goals from range, which I think is what Arsenal lack, but playing those cute passes into the box, which I think also lack from the left-hand side. I think that you're right in the profile that adds. My counter to that would be is, in my opinion, I think Arteta's been guilty over the last couple of years. It's wrong. I shouldn't say it's Arteta. I think Arsenal as a club have been guilty over the last couple of years of signing players and then figuring out what to do with them afterwards.
100%.
Yeah. And it's like, and this kind of ties back to everything, right? From one perspective, you can look at Arsenal signing Madueke, Eze, Gyökeres, and we'll leave Rodrigo out because I think Rodrigo is just a golden fit, whatever. But those 3 players, and Zubimendi as well, because he takes the 6th position, which means Rice isn't going to shift back there. You can look at that and think, like I said, Arsenal stockpiling their squad, they're getting lots of talent in, and there's a grand plan here. Equally, you could think, hang on, is one of these players going to be a Havertz, where we sign us play one position, it doesn't quite work out, and Havertz works out very well up front, but are they going to end up elsewhere? The same with, you could argue, Calafiori. Same, you could argue Declan Rice. You bring him in to be the 6, and 2 years later goes, actually, we prefer him much more in the 8. And that is the fear I have in the back of my head when discussing all of these signings. Yeah,
and it's really, really fascinating because this is a strategy that has been highlighted by journalists that Arsenal are specifically trying to do. We're looking at players, identifying players who we think are excellent footballers, have the right mentality, the right age profile, and then saying we will work them into our system, which works to a point. But at some point, you should look at that left wing position and think, we need a left winger, not we need a right winger or an attacking midfielder. Sign Rodrigo, please. And one thing that scares me more than anything from Dean Mallon, Rodrigo will end up at Chelsea. Chelsea are getting so much money from this Club World Cup. And if we miss out on Rodrigo to Chelsea or City, I will be so angry at this football club, especially if we are the ones who have funded it. So, yes, I absolutely agree with that. Well, sorry, I don't agree with that. I really, really hope not. And from Paul Rickett, moral of the story is don't do gentlemen's agreements. I agree. I think it's insane that this happens so often in football. And then clubs are like, what do you mean gentlemen's agreement? We never said anything. And players just get stuck at clubs. The one comment that I have to read out, first of all, because it's a super chat. So thank you, Henrique13. But also, incredible comment. So I will read it out. Agreeing personal terms with the player first is such an effective way of forcing clubs to lower the price. We've done it very well this window. Which, by the way, those who don't know the context, I once tweeted this out and got dog's abuse. We got 5 million views on Twitter, and everyone found it such a controversial opinion. I genuinely don't understand why. And since then, most deals from several clubs have operated in this way. Unfortunately, with Madueke, it doesn't seem to be working. We still seem to be caving to Chelsea's demands. So we'll see what the final fee is, but I don't get that one.
I love that tweet so much because now every time I see a club agree personal terms, I think of you. Every single time without fail.
I've got 2 niches on Twitter. One is penalty kicks and one is this.
You've got 3 it's cold showers.
That's true. Take cold showers, especially when the weather's like this, folks. And also, I rehash this same tweet in various ways now by just saying, speaking to the player first is a clever way of reducing the fee. And I think everyone knows that actually what I'm alluding to is that agreeing personal terms with the player first is such an effective way. I'll shut up now. Yes, you are right, Victor Samosu. 50 million initial fee. I will be very, very angry at this football club. Again, SE, I will abbreviate you to. No Rodrigo on left. Why? I'd love to know why. And don't know says Rodrigo will clearly come to start on the left. If we sign Rodrigo, Madueke, Eze, and Gyökeres, along with those players we've already signed, how would you rate Arsenal's transfer window as a whole? And in the chat, please leave it at 2.
I think it's close to a 10 out of 10. But here's the thing, right? I think Gyökeres, Eze, Submendi will count in as well. Madueke. I think those 4 players, Norgard, not to forget him, Mr. Christian Norgard. I think of those 5 players, and I'm like, it's like a 6, I'd say. Like, I think you sign lots of good players, but I'm not sure you're addressing your biggest problem, which in my opinion is the left-hand side. And then you sign Rodrigo, and it shoots right up, which I don't know if that's healthy, right? I don't know if Arsenal should be in a position where one player takes that transfer window from like okay to this is what we needed.
And as Callum Humphreys says, I do completely agree with this. Rodrigo is the make or break for Arsenal this transfer window and season. It's the truth. As I've said, as we've said, the most important thing going into this transfer window was a striker and a left winger. And ideally, you're looking for a world-class striker outside of Isak, who as soon as Newcastle got Champions League, I don't think was possible. And then you look to left wingers. And I think we're really fortunate that Rodrigo is even on the market. Real Madrid selling a guy of that quality. The last time we did it was Ødegaard, and it's turned out immensely. So yeah, I really don't understand. I hope we are going to sign Rodrigo, and if Madueke is instead, then yes, we will be rioting outside the Emirates. Rodrigo, Eze, Madueke, Gyökeres sounds amazing in practice, but that's overkill for me. We have a lot of players who can cover Saka without getting Madueke. Also blocks Nwaneri's pathway a bit. I agree with the Nwaneri point. It blocks his pathway, but the difficulty is if you don't sign, otherwise we're playing, if Saka gets injured again, which isn't unfathomable because he's just gone through a really terrible injury, you're relying on Nwaneri at right wing. And that's really not his position. So do you think we can rely on Nwaneri for right wing, or do you agree with this comment or not?
Well, there's 2 parts to that, right? I think I've been incredibly impressed with Nwaneri, but I don't think necessarily the problem is relying on Nwaneri or getting a backup for Saka in case he's injured. I think up until last season, Saka has been incredibly reliable, right? I think the bigger problem is, as you said, Arteta is a bit reluctant to trust youth. And does anyone here think he'd start Nwaneri in 15 Premier League games if Saka was fit all the time? Absolutely not, right? Or even that 10 games, or bring it, let's say, makes 30 appearances. You get on that, he'd be a regular rotation. I don't think so. And I think the consequence of that would, at worst, is Saka injury. But I think even at best, it's taking a player who's played a ton of football and just tiring him out more and more. And I feel like we've seen a lot of players recently across the league. I think of Man City last season, just look absolutely gone from the amount of football they've been playing. And you don't want that happening to probably your best player.
Which is probably why Man City have literally rehauled the whole squad, because you need a kind of a 3-year churn where if you've got the same guys playing, we've seen it. That's why we fell off last season, because these same guys were playing so many minutes. To wrap up quickly, a few things. Absolutely agree with this, Henko. Do people forget how good our team is? We got second, and in the Champions League semi, with all the injuries we had, we are looking to lift the floor of the team, not just the ceiling. I absolutely agree, but we do need to push that ceiling a bit higher, because we can't keep. Saka did so much work in that attack when the team was thriving. So we need someone to take some of the output off him. I'm sure Gyökeres will. But at left wing, the numbers Martinelli and Trossard were getting just wasn't enough. This is an interesting comment. What about selling Nelly and Trossard and get all 4? Very quickly, would you sell both, either, neither?
If to get all 4, I think you sell both, because at that point you have Rodrigo and then you have Madueke, and then Eze can cover on the left-hand side. I think selling both and getting those 4 is a suitable upgrade, and I don't think you lose like coverage in positions.
Yeah, I think we'd lose, obviously, Martinelli's pace in behind, of course. But if Martinelli funds the Rodrigo deal, then I will respectfully be his taxi driver to the airport. That is where I stand on that. And finally, that I think we have time for before I get told off by the boss. PSG are running riot. Wow, they're killing Madrid. Yeah, it's 3-0 PSG. For the last, I don't know what they're on. I'm not going to speculate anything about Icarus. If anyone's watched that Netflix show, unbelievable show.
You can't say that.
I didn't say anything. They're unbelievable, PSG. So hopefully they will beat Chelsea in the final, because A, I don't want Chelsea to get any prize money, and B, they'll run up all this. Maresca's won more than Arteta, and maybe that's for the best. Maybe Arteta needs that pressure from the Twitter accounts that is non-existent in real life. Apart from that, we will wrap up the show there. As I told you before we came on air, I will always make the most of the 30 to 45 minutes. So I hope you enjoyed coming on, Alex. It's a pleasure to have you. Where can people find you?
Oh, absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me on. You can find me at Alexander BRKR. It used to be at Euro-Expert, and then Messi fans bullied me out of it. So that's where you can find me now on X.
And also creating content for The Athletic.
Indeed.
Which you may see him on YouTube or other platforms, which is very, very high quality content. So I will say, as I have said for a while, go follow Alex. He's not only a good analyst, but also a decent fella. So without further ado, I will try and not butcher the outro this week, because I absolutely did last week. And I should say also, thank you to all the Patreons who are continuing to support the channel. We, as Cannon Podcast as a whole, really do appreciate it. So to everyone, not just the Patrons, but thanks for keeping it Arsenal.
Tens of thousands of football fans came to Highbury. This was one kind of queue the ladies thoroughly enjoyed. Electrifying. Electrifying. Inspiration.